Hey, who wants breakfast?
I thought Mutt be working North Point today. He liked them railroad ships.
No, his wife is having some kind of operation, so he gave back his hours.
Alright, well, it wouldn't be a Kino video without some pointless and trite observations. So, let's take a look at some Easter eggs, references, and behind-the-scenes details. Now, this is by no means a comprehensive list. This is a dense series, and even after 3 rewatches, there are plenty of things I'm sure I missed. But I figured it would be fun to take a break from all this serious analysis and take a look at the fun details they hid throughout the show. In episode 2, the pit crew talks about chicken nuggets, and Dee cynically states that the man who invented a nugget was most likely a stooge who wasn't fairly compensated for his invention. This reflects the way he and other workers on the show are treated, with the lion's share of the profit going to the bosses who don't support them when they need it. It's also very reflective of real-life stories of inventors not being fairly compensated for the magnitude of their contributions.
You want to know how GE rewarded Dr. Hall? A $10 U.S. savings bond.
However, while this does fit thematically in the show, in real life, the inventor of the chicken nugget, Herb Lotman, was extremely wealthy. This is probably in part due to the fact that he worked with McDonald's through his own company, Keystone Foods, rather than as a simple employee. In that way, it's more like a co-op situation. In Season 1, Episode 4, we see the actor who plays Chris Partlow as a bailiff in the courtroom scene. This was of course before he was cast in the role of Chris in Season 3, similar to how Joseph Ganascoli appeared in The Sopranos a season before he was cast as Vito. In Season 1, Episode 5, you can hear the Big Fat Morning Show, which is a real show in Baltimore and would be a plot point in the 4th season. In Season 1, Episode 8, Dee talks about how he feels like he can't breathe due to all the stress he feels from the game. This is of course ironic given how he dies. Also in this episode, we see that Wallace's brother can keep the count but not do math problems for his schoolwork. We'll see the same thing in Season 4, that kids can do math when it's something that's relevant to them. During the East vs. West basketball game, you can see a guy holding a live snake at the game. No idea what this is about, since none of the other characters even seem to look at the guy. I've read some stuff that people carrying exotic pets isn't unheard of in Baltimore, so maybe it's a reference to that, or the extra that they brought in for the scene just happened to have a snake on him. In Season 2, Episode 2, when Spiros meets with Frank, he has an American accent. All throughout the rest of the show, he has a Greek one. Now, the Greeks are known to have different identities, and the Greek himself even says that he isn't actually Greek. However, later on, Spiros is shown talking with Frank in a Greek accent, so this first scene must have been filmed early on before they decided to give him an accent. In Season 2, Episode 11, Nick sleeps with Prissy, a childhood friend of his and Ziggy's. This is the girl Ziggy thought he got pregnant, and Nick said that pretty much every guy on the port has had a turn with her. When he sees what he did in the morning, you can see him look a little disgusted with himself. Also in that episode, you can see David Simon as a reporter in the crowd when Frank is arrested. In Season 3, Episode 4, when Cuddy and his guys are watching their target, Sapper says that he wants the West Unseld jersey their target is wearing. Gerard responds that he should get a Muggsy Bogues jersey instead. Bogues is one of the shortest players in the NBA, standing at 5'3", so this is an insult about Sapper's height. Okay, now this next one is interesting. We get an entire story about a background character told over the course of 3 seasons. In Season 3, Episode 8, we see a white girl named Dee Dee buying drugs in Amsterdam. She's nervous, and we can tell that she's new to this addiction. In Season 4, Episode 8, we see her again as a prostitute in Fat Andre's store. Her addiction has grown worse, and she's now tricking to make money. However, in Season 5, Episode 2, she's in recovery as part of Bubbles' NA group. She talks about her addiction and what it did to her, and it's incredible the layer of detail in the show that we're able to follow her journey across the seasons through these background details. In Season 3, Episode 10, we see Rawls in the background of the gay bar. It's a subtle detail showing us that Rawls has a whole other side to him that we just never get to see on the show. In Season 4, Episode 2, there's a picture of Avon up at Cuddy's gym. Avon specifically stated that he didn't want a photo of himself on display, but maybe it didn't matter once he was locked up. Also, in that same episode, you can see Naaman playing Halo 2. And of course, you know it's Halo 2, because like all video games, the title of the game is visible on screen the entire time you're playing. In Season 4, Episode 7, there's an error. Grace calls Cuddy David when his name is actually Dennis. Also, the actress Dravon James plays both Grace and her junkie sister Queenie. It's a really good transformation, as I had no idea when I first watched the scene. In Season 4, Episode 11, when Carcetti orders the Public Works Department to pick up the abandoned car in the city, you can see that the car they pick up is actually Ziggy's burned up Camaro from Season 2. It's funny to think that it's just been sitting there all these years. In Season 5, Episode 4, you can see Johnny 50, a dock worker from Season 2, is now homeless and living under the bridge. It's a powerful detail that shows us how the decline of the Union and industrial decay has really affected the working class. In Season 5, Episode 5, if you call the number Marlowe gives to his lawyer in this episode, 410-915-0909, it returns a pre-recorded quote from Marlowe. However, I was disappointed to find that it's just dialogue from the show instead of a custom message from Marlowe.
What the fuck you know about what I need on my mind, motherfucker? My name was on the street. So what's up for this shit here? I'm gonna go down them corners and let the people know. Word did not get back to me.
Also, in that same episode, McNulty's sons are listening to the band Dead Meadow. David Simon's nephew, Jason Simon, is a guitarist and vocalist for the band, so this was a call out for him. Now, that's it for Easter eggs for now, but I'm sure some of you are screaming at me that I forgot about the real-life characters that are a part of the series. Don't worry, I'll be covering that in its own section. But for now, I wanted to cover the prequel shorts, since I don't really have another place to put them. During Season 5, HBO produced 3 short videos to be included in the DVD box set. These videos are prequel shorts for McNulty and Bunk, Prop Joe, and Omar. The first video shows a young Proposition Joe in school. We know from the show that Joe went to Dunbar High School with Irvin Burrell, but this is much earlier. Joe is trying to sell test answers to another kid. Now, there's no indication as to who this kid is, but I like to assume that it's Burrell, as Joe did say he was stupid growing up. The kid ends up shorting Joe, who in turn offers to sell the teacher information about who stole the test answers. This definitely seems in line with the Joe we see on the show, constantly scheming and pitting rivals against each other for his own benefit. The next short shows a young Jimmy McNulty joining the homicide department for the first time. This is about 2 years before the show begins. McNulty is promoted to homicide faster than anyone would expect because he solved a case Ray Cole was working. We'll talk about this in McNulty's section, but the reason he's so effective is because he follows Colvin's philosophy of staying connected with the community, which makes sense given that he came up in the Western under Colvin. He and Bunk then bond over their love of drinking on the job, and we see that a friendship between the two starts to grow, and that will become one of the hallmarks of the series. Finally, the last short is about a young Omar Little. He and his brother No Heart Anthony, along with another older boy, are planning on robbing a man. Omar questions why they would rob a poor man who barely has any money to begin with, and then forces the boy to give back the money at gunpoint. The boy then tells Anthony that Omar doesn't have what it takes for the game. The connections they set up with this short are obvious. Omar's code and how he only robs dealers who have excess money and never civilians gets established here. Also, the fact that Omar has a conscience that does eventually end up getting him killed. And finally, how Omar isn't afraid of confrontation. This is the only time we see No Heart Anthony on the show. In Season 1, Bubbles and McNulty tell Anthony's story about shooting himself in the chest, and how he's doing a prison sentence in Hagerstown. Though Anthony is only a background character for Omar, he does have an important purpose when it comes to setting up the themes of knowing the street, which we'll talk about next time. And that's about it for the prequels. Now, Wendell Pierce, the actor who plays Bunk, did have plans to create a prequel film starring Samuel L. Jackson. The film would have been about Avon and Stringer going to war for control of the towers in their early years, but David Simon wouldn't sign off on it. Now that many of the old cast have passed away, the film will likely never see the light of day. But who knows? Maybe one day it will get the Many Saints of Baltimore treatment. Alright, now that we've covered the plot of the show, let's get into the characters. McNulty, my office, now!
The fuck did I do?